The NHTSA has 10 accidents, including this one, that survivable accidents in which they've traced this maker of counterfeit airbags to the airbag that deployed incorrectly in cars.
Wow.
10 accidents that should have been survivable. In 8 of those accidents, there were fatalities that only happened because of the faulty airbag.
The Imitation Nation podcast covers all things counterfeit, hosted by Shabir Mirsafdar of the Partnership for Safe Medicines and Sven Bergman of Venture Global.
Welcome, Sven, to Imitation Nation number 32, which is an age older than the child you just graduated from high school.
Wow, that is a good point. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not traveling for at this point, it's been 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks of stretch of not getting on a plane, and I'm honestly pretty overjoyed about it.
You don't even know what to do with yourself if you're not in an airplane. That's amazing. But you're going soon on vacation, right? So will this include an airplane, the vacation?
I'm taking my stepdad on a bucket list trip to Alaska, and it most definitely will include an airplane, but not a cruise boat because I don't do cruises.
That is fair. You should never be trapped on a boat you can't get off on. No, awesome. Well, fantastic. Good to see you. I'm excited for the episode we have going on. There's certainly a lot been happening since you and I talked last because we've both been off a little bit. So do you want to kick us off with your first?
Absolutely. So it's my favorite topic, counterfeit money. I absolutely love this one. We've had some lessons about where not to pass counterfeit bills so that you don't raise suspicion. We talked about on a previous episode how you're not supposed to pay the court bailiff money.
That was a good one.
With counterfeit money that actually earned that man an additional criminal charge. Here's some other places that you shouldn't pass counterfeit bills. You shouldn't try and pass fake $20 bills into the casino cage at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Pennsylvania, or probably any casino cage. If anyone knows what a fake bill looks like, it's those guys, and they're going to call security immediately and get you arrested. And this seemed obvious, but you probably don't want to go to the dollar store and pass 7 fake hundreds to the cashier there. First of all, it's all going to be on camera, and you are going to stick out like a sore thumb having overpaid with $700 bills at a place called the dollar store.
Incredible.
It's not exactly counterfeit money, but one of the things I learned as part of my certified fraud examiner training is this process called positive pay. And it's where you as an entity write a bunch of checks, like let's say you're a town, and you send the list of those checks to the bank so that when a check arrives, they have already pre-confirmed that it is going to be an allowable check. Well, in North Bend, Oregon, a criminal actually started counterfeiting checks for the town, the city's checks itself, right? So they picked a big target, and one of those checks got caught as it was sent to an individual, a taxpayer. The taxpayer wasn't expecting a check from the town and called in about it, and the town had 2 thoughts. First of which is that there's no way this person could have gotten away with this crime. And the second of which is, we actually are pretty sure that the next thing they were going to do was call up this taxpayer and say, hey, you got overpaid. Can you send us the money back via Zelle or Venmo?
I actually have heard of this scam before where people will send you fake checks. And actually, if you ever get a check that you don't expect, like exactly this, don't cash it, because that exactly is the scheme. You cash the check. It might get put on a 7-day hold or whatever it is. In between, they call you like, hey, sorry, we overpaid you. Send it back. And then you send back the Zelle, because they most likely will ask for a Zelle or a PayPal or whatever. And after that, the check will bounce. So now you're out the money twice. So the bank will suck the money back out or will never deposit it, and you're out the money you paid. So no, I've seen this scheme before. And with the fake checks, I always thought that was done with after the Catch Me If You Can movie with Tom Hanks, which was all the fake checks. But that's incredible that they do this.
I think it's doable. It was probably 2 decades ago. I had a business colleague who said that she fired an administrative staffer from her company, and that person actually took one of her checks and had a whole book printed and was running around Washington, D.C. writing checks on her account. And it worked at that time, but clearly, if you are an entity big enough to do positive pay, you probably should do positive pay. It's it's an excellent first line of defense against check fraud.
Great. Yeah, and about the counterfeit money, it's incredible that it keeps going. It actually made me way more cautious of using larger bills. A, for people, I think, being freaked out about it, and B, me actually not quite honestly always knowing how to check for the authenticity. So I get very, very cautious of using larger bills now. So
My corner grocery
nice.
here in San Francisco is run by a Yemeni family. I love them to death. And they've saved my bacon so many times because they carry so many things that run out in my pantry. And yesterday I was in there and I realized that what I had was $100 bill. And I actually, before I handed it to him, I held it up to the light and I checked it because I would just feel like such a jerk if I accidentally passed a fake 100. I mean, I got it out of the ATM at the bank, but heavens, you just don't know.
Heavens, you don't know. I agree. All right.
All right, what do you got?
So let me cover the second story here. And this will be the longer one of this podcast. So Shabir, as you know, we've covered counterfeit airbags quite a bit, right? Like we've covered the different ones that have done it. And this is really big news. So in early June, actually like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a jury in Broward County, Florida awarded, ready, $603 million judgment
Oh my
to the
God.
family of a deceased woman, right? It's a lot of money, like $500 million. A deceased woman who was killed when her counterfeit airbag deployed, and the shrapnel from that counterfeit product damaged her throat and she bled to death. Like the crash itself wasn't hard enough. The airbag actually deployed, but the shrapnel is what killed her. So I know you read the case as well. How did that car get a counterfeit airbag?
So we've all know someone, if not ourselves, have know someone who's got a car that was in a wreck and the airbags deployed, but it was not a big enough wreck that the car is total junk. But even if it is total junk, if someone decides that it's worth salvaging, you'll put another airbag in it. And if the person doing that doesn't buy it from the right place, they'll get a counterfeit airbag. And so that's what happened here. This car was in a wreck. It was given a salvage title, which means that it can't be operated. You can't get a plate for it. You can't get tags. It was then repaired. And by the laws of the state of Florida, if it's repaired and inspected, you can actually get it a rebuilt title. So that's still a signal that it's been in an accident. But of course, the inspection should have revealed that there was a counterfeit airbag in there. That's one of the things that you should check for, especially in modern times, right? We now know about the whole counterfeit airbag problem. Apparently it didn't work. And that car, after being rebuilt with a counterfeit airbag, was sold eventually to this woman who had this tragic end in what should have been a survivable accident, but was not
Yeah.
because she basically had a grenade blow up in her face and caused her to bleed to death. I feel so terrible. She's got children and
Yeah.
and a husband, and they should not have had to lose their mom.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, and also when we look at the case, and while I don't necessarily want to name the companies in it, because with the exception of the actual airbag company that manufactured the faulty, most likely counterfeit airbag, everybody else was dismissed from the lawsuit in the end. But the companies in the end who sold the car to the person, that was a reputable, large, US-based, multi-chain, multi-state car sales company where you go to buy cars. Like it was not somebody that was a, weird, Billy Bob's used car shop on the side of a road. This was a large seller that sold that car, and it moved through these commercials. So to your point, that risk is really out there.
Yeah, and what struck me about this case, Sven, is that there's so many defendants. Can you just take us through all the people that got named as defendants in this case?
Sure. So the plaintiff's law firm there did an excellent job, and they built a very extensive case. And what they basically did is they wanted to examine every person, every company, including every holding company of a company that had basically come in touch with the car. So that started with the rental car company that owned it initially, then the wholesale company that sold it, the repair shops, which there were two of them that touched the car, the employees of the car shop, and then the wholesaler again, who sold it to the large retail chain. And so those were the first ones. And then in addition, they included the online seller of the faulty airbag, the platform where it was sold, and the shipping company that shipped it. And so all of those were, as part of, they kept amending the complaint, were added. They also found the person that, and we can name them because they were dismissed, eBay. They found the seller of the platform that sold it. And so they kept increasing the complaint and then basically to figure out, okay, who is at fault and who can be charged. And as part of the lawsuit, it was very interesting to read how it kept getting inflated. And then people got dismissed and it kept deflated down to the manufacturer of the counterfeit airbag was the one that was ultimately charged.
And that company that made the airbag is a Chinese company, right?
Correct. Chinese company called, got her name here, Chinese company, Jillian Province Ditiano Safety Technology Ltd. So they're based out of China. They were served. There was a U.S. contact for them found that was able to accept the complaint, but they never responded. They never showed up at court. There was not a real defense. So to a large degree, it was a summary judgment, which part of that, so Broward County is a county that is known to make very large judgments. Broward County is a famous one that does very large judgments. And so a lot of the judgment of the $603 million is punitive damages. So not only did they agree that this company sold a counterfeit airbag, they then asked for punitive damages. And so that created that massive number of $603 million that was awarded as punitive damages on top of a basically summary judgment. So, and that company is there. All the other participants in it, the rental car company that owned it initially, the repair shops, all the people that work for the repair shops, the large resale company that sold the ultimate car back, they were all dismissed. Everybody was dismissed from lawsuit means the judge throughout the course found that there's no reason to hold them liable, or the plaintiff kind of said, yes, we're not going to pursue anymore. The only things that are interesting here that I want to point out are the following. One, the only company other than the manufacturer of the airbag that basically did something different was the wholesaler of that car. So it is a group known as Mannheim Remarketing. They're owned by a larger group, Cox Automotive, and they decided to settle the case. And they settled the case because they took the car from the rental car company, they resold it to a repair shop, then they took it back and they resold it or wholesaled it back out to the reseller. So they touched the car twice. And to your point, somewhere in between there was a inspection that occurred.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have all the documents. I have no idea what the company did, but somewhere in that process, they might have decided that this was too large a legal risk to go through trial for this entire thing and decided in the lawsuit before it went to trial stage to go to settlement. And so in a very positive phase on that is because they settled, there's now settlement money that is being given out to the family and basically also provide money to your point, the children that were left behind. Because the sad piece is that while the $600 million is an amazing judgment, the chances are they will collect $0 from it ever, because it's a Chinese-based company. Unless they can find assets of this company in the US, there's no way to collect on this. And then the only last two, and we can leave this for later, that were moved differently. One of them was UPS because they were the shipper of it. They were also dismissed, but they were dismissed without prejudice, meaning because they are controlled under different rules, the judge couldn't say you're just absolved of this. They always carry the risk of being charged for something because something bad was being transported by them. So that was very interesting. And then the last one that was charged but then dismissed was eBay. And eBay was dismissed because they took a Section 230 defense and said, we are not responsible for what's being posted on our platform.
Wait. Are you allowed to sell airbags on eBay in the first place?
So funny you say that. No. And as part of the evidence and as part of the documents, you actually see that the plaintiff very clearly said, by the way, you sold this. Your own rules of service say airbags are either not allowed, or if they're allowed, you have to give us the VIN of the car where this was salvaged from. You have to show us an inspection that that was a good airbag. There's like 4 or 5 requirements that they have where they're like, only with these very strict things can you sell airbags on eBay. That seller, obviously, didn't follow any of those rules.
No.
And eBay never argued, because I read through there was a hearing on it. I read through the transcript of the hearing. eBay never argued if this was or wasn't following their rules. All they kept saying is, Section 230 says that we are not responsible for what is being put on our website. And that was the argument, flat out. And so, yes, it violated their own terms of service. The person most likely, when they sold it, might have lied in the posting. I have no idea. But yeah, they violated their own terms of service and they took a 230 defense and it worked.
I am just appalled by that. I think that at some point there has to be some liability, and I am often reassured by the Better Platform's commitment. If if you violate your own terms of service and fail to uphold them and enforce them on your platform, and then you hide behind 230, then they don't mean anything at all. They're just marketing copy to make me feel better as a brand protection person.
Yeah, no, it was very stark to see how the law is. And the judge, I read the entire transcript, said, I don't have discretion on this because that's just what the law is. However, that goes back to a previous episode we had. It will be very interesting to see when people start to take a different tack and saying, no, you're not responsible for what you're posting. You're responsible for an inherent flaw in your software. So you basically have faulty software. And I think the entire piece of trying to go after your platform is faulty might start to take off. But yeah, the 230 defense, it was interesting. eBay didn't settle. eBay went straight for that, got a hearing, was one of the first ones to get a hearing. Fascinating transcript to read. And it was, so there goes that. And then with that, they also found the seller, an individual out of Dearborn, also got dismissed. I think he got dismissed most likely because there might have not been a lot of assets that he had, and he proved that he wasn't meaning to sell counterfeit. But it was a very interesting case.
Wow, the seller got away. I just don't think that there's going to be any hope of collecting from the Chinese nationals here.
No, listen, I think the plaintiff's firm did an amazing job, which was, they brought the case to trial. As part of bringing the case to trial, a lot of the parties were either being dismissed or the wholesaler went to settlement. And quite honestly, the plaintiff's firm did their job, which means that they got the victim some restitution. The additional piece with the counterfeit piece, that was already in motion. And then they only asked for let's get punitive damages, because that also helps aid a firm because it's kind of what they can now claim. But really, they did the good thing because they tried the case in a way that they were able to get some settlement money out of it from a party that they were holding liable. The counterfeit airbag manufacturers, yeah, that's more like the news coverage of, and we can say it, Morgan & Morgan, who most folks know from billboards on highways,
That's where
was
I know
able to get a $600 settlement. That's pretty good PR. It just is. You might never collect a single cent from this, but now I can put on my billboard that I have a $600 million settlement, right? So,
I don't actually know if how the laws lay out in every state about taking a salvaged car, which I was once in a pretty bad accident, and my station wagon, which was thankfully empty of children, was considered to be a total. Now I think about it, maybe somewhere that station wagon is still riding around with rebuilt parts and a rebuilt title after being repaired and hopefully inspected very thoroughly. My airbags did not deploy in that.
yeah.
It was a rear end crash, but I can see where some states might take a dim view of trying to actually rebuild a salvage title and don't allow it. Florida does, and I guess good for them, but this is the kind of risk that happens when you do that.
Yeah, and for anybody who buys used cars, I think this was a reminder for me also really check everything you can, check the Carfax, make sure that if you have the opportunity to have somebody inspect the car, if you see anything that looks like it might have had a crash, get it double and checked. Because again, when you look at the complaint, and I want to make it clear, these people were dismissed, there was no fault, but the final seller of this was Drive Time, right? That's not a small shop. That's a large car dealer in the United States. And they didn't know because they took it from a wholesaler, and it went through so many different hands that as a consumer in this wide open market, just be careful when you buy, again, when you buy used cars, have them inspected. When you have your car shop work on your airbag, ask them, where did you get the airbag? Because again, this is not just about the airbag potentially not deploying. This is horrible. This thing deployed like a landmine, and the shrapnel took the driver out, and now 3 kids are motherless. So really important that. And then the last piece, and I'll get off my soapbox here, is there has to be a better way where we find a way where either through a serial code or through an identifier, like close your supply chain to a degree where these OEM parts can really get authenticated that no, this is a legitimate OEM part that should be in there. It's just it's
Sven, I'm
I
going to
don't
push
know.
back on that. And I'm just going to say
And
this,
that's fine.
which is that we have, as you know, because this is a topic that we both work on together, our medicine supply chain is incredibly traceable with serial numbers and legal requirements, but none of that will protect you if someone, when no one is looking, takes a medicine that is not part of that supply chain and gives it to and administers it to a patient or puts it in a bottle that looks good. So in this scenario, we could serialize the entire airbag supply chain. But if you've got a crooked repair person who's willing to save a couple bucks and put a
You're right.
counterfeit airbag in, there's nothing that securing that supply chain is going to do. They're
Yeah,
still
no,
going to they're still going to crime.
you are you're right. It will not stop a motivated criminal or somebody who's just negligent from not doing the right thing. For me, it's just when I see these things, I'm like, what can we do to avoid these, right? Avoid more of these tragic accidents. And as you and I covered before, this is not a single airbag. There's hundreds of thousands of these airbags
Yeah.
floating around in the United States.
Well, and that actually goes to my parting advice for everybody who's still with us in this segment, which is if you've ever had an airbag deployed, if you kept the car and it wasn't installed or a new airbag installed by the dealer, you should go get it checked right now. And the reason I say that is because the NHTSA has 10 accidents, including this one, that are survivable accidents in which they've traced this maker of counterfeit airbags to the airbag that deployed incorrectly in cars.
Wow.
10 accidents that should have been survivable. In 8 of those accidents, there were fatalities that only happened because of the faulty airbag. And 2 of the people that did not die had pretty severe injuries as a result. So this is not just an isolated problem. This is becoming a bigger problem. This particular manufacturer, of which there's no reason to believe there's only one of them in the world, it has cost 7 other families lives that didn't need to go because that's the promise of airbags. So yeah, if you have an airbag that was installed after an accident and you've got that car and it wasn't the dealer who installed it, go get it checked.
Good advice.
All right. So I'm going to need a moment to process, by the way, our next story, because last night I watched the USA versus Turkey. We did not need to win that game
But it would have been
exit our group and proceed to the next round. But we fought valiantly. The game was tied, and in the last 60 seconds, Turkey scored an amazing goal. If I was wearing a hat, I would tip it to the Turkish national football team. But it was amazing. It was a dramatic game, and actually, I think Turkey outplayed us a little bit. Actually, during that game, it was
they were very motivated to end on a strong note.
So with the World Cup comes World Cup merch, and with World Cup merch comes counterfeit World Cup merch. And so, I've been following this, and there's a ton of merch out there. There's even a feel-good video circulating on YouTube of a kid who saved his $100 for a year out of his allowance so he could buy his dad a Mexico jersey. But there's a brand protection company, Accensus, who took a look as the World Cup was starting at the patterns of counterfeit World Cup merch,
Mhm.
and they said that the thing that you should always be careful to only buy from licensed, legitimate resellers. But they said the place where you should expect more danger would be merch related to countries that are newly entered into the World Cup. If you have a company, a country like Cape Verde or Jordan or Curacao or Uzbekistan that has not made a World Cup appearance before, their supply chain security for their national jerseys is going to be possibly a little less mature than, let's say, Portugal.
A little less mature. That's a nice way to say.
And this is funny too, because I was walking through Reagan National Airport, I think it was
Mm-hmm.
a couple of weeks ago, and there is like a vending machine with World Cup merchandise. And I thought to myself, how do I know that that's real?
You don't?
I don't. I thought, do I have to go to the World Cup website to like figure out if that's a real vending machine? Would they even say anything about it? But yeah, if you're a fan of those, expect that there is definitely going to be probably more fraud for new countries that are newly entered into the World Cup and haven't been there before.
Agreed. Yeah. A couple of things here. First of all, as you know, I'm a German and American, so dual citizen. Both my teams lost yesterday.
I'm so sorry.
Both teams didn't. It's just a rough day. Both teams didn't need to win to advance, so it was fine. But the same for us. Germany should have won against Uruguay. Like there was no reason for us to not win. But again, they were. Oh no, we played Ecuador. Sorry, Ecuador, and they were just more motivated. They were way more motivated, and we Germany played fine, and then but they played lazy, and man, Ecuador they didn't stop, and they want to end on a high note, which they did, which was fantastic. But so, anyways, both teams. Apart from that, all of these fake things, yeah, I see them pop up on TikTok. Like I see a lot of just very strange ads now coming on my social feed.
Mm-hmm.
And then just for folks to remind them, right? This is not just about, buying something that might not be real. Remember when in one of the last episodes, we talked about the American Apparel Association and learned that from their report, Unboxing Fake Fashion, right? That these fake clothing items, they can be downright dangerous, right? They can have formaldehyde in them, lead, like there was one that had lead in it. They are likely highly flammable. They basically ignore all like clothing material safety rules that exist that we have put in place for the last 50 years. So when you buy a fake, yes, you're not just getting ripped off, and also you're ripping off the trademark owner, but you're really being at the risk of getting exposed to a toxic chemical or a substance that shouldn't be on your body. So just a reminder, don't buy counterfeit, especially clothing.
We'll put another link to the Unboxing Fake Fashion report from the American Apparel, our friends at the American Apparel Association. But yeah, that hat that was soaked in formaldehyde that I could imagine sweating in and having it soak into my skull, that was a thought that I really didn't enjoy having.
I love the lead line jacket. That was a nice touch. So no, all of that is, and listen, and yeah, it's a good point. Be careful when it's a new team, or like Scotland, who hadn't been in the World Cup in 30 years, right? I don't even know what a real Scotland jersey looks like. So,
Right.
anyways,
That would be
this
even
was
worse
good.
if you spend all your money and there's like, it's the wrong color. All right. So
Well,
that's
Shabir,
it.
with that,
Ben, what's the word?
the word is Shabir. Read us out.
The Imitation Nation podcast is a production of Cause Stories and is the sole owner of this production. All statements are their own and not the opinions of their employers. Podcast management by Sarah Imber Safdar. Theme music written by Jonathan Boyle.